Welcome back. I'm Sarah DeShaw, blogger and online educator over at sarahdeshaw.com, and today we're going to talk all about lighting. So what I actually did is pull a little excerpt from a group coaching program I have that's all about how to create a cohesive brand aesthetic, and I'm actually going to play that for you today. You'll hear it mentioning that there's lighting guides in the resources area, but there won't be because that's actually just for people who are in the membership. But you should still get a lot of great value out of watching this video today. If you're struggling with lighting, it's one of those things that feels a little tricky until it just clicks, and then you can get it and understand how to create good lighting every time. I hope this video will give you some of the knowledge that you need so that you can go practice and get better at creating great lighting for your photos for your brand, so you can create a beautiful, amazing, cohesive aesthetic and attract your ideal customers. All right, here is the video. Part 1, lighting. What is lighting? With photography and videography, lighting is all sources of light that may appear in your content. This could include natural lighting, which is the sun, a lamp that sits in the room you're filming in, or even a fancy stand light that's specifically meant for photos and video. It also includes the flash that comes with your phone or camera. Why lighting is important. It makes or breaks photos. Good lighting is the #1 most important aspect of photography that will make you look pro even when you're photographing with your phone. If you really think about it, capturing photos and videos is simply capturing the way light hits things. So if you want to create amazing content, it makes sense that you're going to want to have the best conditions possible for your photos and videos. This means good lighting. What most people do and why it doesn't work. Most people underestimate light and think it's a problem to solve with filters or editing. There's a common misconception that you can just edit a photo or video to perfection. But truth be told, there isn't an edit that can make up for terribly lit content. And if a photo or video is well lit, it hardly needs any editing at all. I'm sure you've had a moment when you think, oh my gosh, this photo looks so amazing. When that happens, I'd bet you 9 times out of 10, it's the light making it look great. And times when you feel unphotogenic, I bet if you'd improve your light, you wouldn't feel that way. Lighting really does make all the difference. So what you should do instead of taking photos and videos and just hoping the lighting works out, it's super important to know a little bit about what makes lighting good. It's helpful to understand some key principles. Let's talk about my top lighting tips. And lighting guides are available in the resources area, so check them out. They're going to be super helpful for you. So here are my top lighting tips. 1, keep your light source at eye level. 2, keep your lighting even. 3, consider the distance of your light source. 4, stick with one color of light. And 5, use natural light if it applies to your brand. So we're going to talk about each of these tips individually and how to apply them. And I want to note that any of the tips I'm about to share can be discarded for creative or on-brand reasons. These are just my general rules, but there are always exceptions to the rules. So here's an example of how sometimes photos can be exceptions to the rules. High quality moments trump high quality photos or videos. Don't be afraid to share some of your lower quality photos and video, as they often create great connection with your audience. So each of these are photos that I have taken, and they're not my best photos, but they all make me feel really happy inside, and they can connect with other people, and that emotion will translate. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to share these with my audience. It would still be a good idea. We don't want to get perfectionism wound up in all this, because then that can get kind of stale and boring. We want you to create excellent photos, but we also want you to be real and capture beautiful moments as well that you can share and really connect with your audience through that. Okay, so let's go back to the tips. Tip number 1, keep your lighting at eye level. The first tip is to keep your lighting at eye level. You want to keep your source of light as eye level as possible, because any light above or below you can make you look tired, spooky, or cause other unwanted shadows. The easiest solution for this is to face your light source. This means you turn toward a window or other light source for great light. So here's a few dramatic examples of what I mean. You can see that in each photo, the light comes from a different place. First, the light source is above eye level, and then in the middle one, it's below, and then on the last photo, it's at the recommended eye level. Sometimes you can get away with your light source being in the wrong spot if there's other lighting helping you out, But I hope you can see from these examples that eye level lighting is the way to go. So this is why if you're just taking pictures in a space where there's just overhead lighting and there's no window light, it probably won't turn out looking that good. But almost every time you can walk over and take a picture in front of a window or an open door that is to the outside lighting, it will just really look nice and it'll give you great skin and a very luminous photo. And I will say one trick that you can do if, for example, like on the picture on the left, how the lighting's above, one way that you can get around it is if you can point your nose towards the light. So like in that photo showing about what light is looking like if it was from overhead, if there's overhead lighting, if this person would point their nose toward the light and then lift their phone above, that would be a way to get around it if they would snap a picture from above with the light lighting up their face that way. Tip number 2, keep your lighting even. Before you snap the first photo or record the first clip, find a spot where the lighting is even. By that, I mean whatever the subject is should have the same intensity of light as the background. Whether you're indoors or outdoors, you need to find a spot where the lighting is even with either full sun or full shade on the subject and in the background. If you have a mixture of both, you risk having unwanted shadows and you may end up in a situation where your face is dark but your background looks great, or your face looks great but your background is way too bright and it just kind of looks like holes of like white in the background. If the lighting isn't even, editing your image or video will get really tricky. The biggest thing to focus on for this tip is to make sure you have the same lighting not only on your face, but on your background too. So here's a couple examples of the background and the subject having 2 different intensities of light. So that's the first and second photo. And then an example of the background and subject having even lighting. So that's the third photo. If you're going for something artsy or extra moody or even candid, you may want to have different lighting, but as a general rule, you'll want to keep your lighting even. So on the left, we have the subject in the shade, but the background is in the sun. So this is where you can see those kind of like holes where it looks like there's just like white patches that are just like taken out of the photo in the background. And then in the middle picture, you can see that there's half sun and half shade on the subject and also in the background. So you can see how on the subject's face, there's like shadows on the right side and sun on the left. And in the background, you can see shadows on the ground as well as bright light on the ground. But then when you look at the third photo, the subject and the background are both completely in the shade. I mean, you can see a tiny bit of light poking through, but generally this is like really well shaded. So you can see that the person here, like all the lighting looks really bright and even in the background as well. So some of this has to do with the limitations of a phone camera. With a professional camera, you can adapt for these limitations somewhat, but even so, I would still be following some of these rules for photos. So I just also want to mention all 3 of these photos were taken within like a few feet of each other. So the last photo, if this person kind of like puts their back a little more towards that little berry bush tree thing, then that would be like what the photo is on the left. And then if they put their face towards like the bush situation, then that's what the other photo is. So these are all literally taken like right in the same spot. These aren't different locations. So this just goes to show you how you can find great light within a place where you can also have not so good of light. So there's always somewhere you can find that will have better light. And sometimes finding better light just means moving a few feet over from where you were. Tip number 3, consider the distance of your light source. Whenever you capture content, there will be an ideal spot where the light source is the perfect distance away from your phone or camera. Meaning like for the look you're going for. There's not like a general rule of perfect spot. So before you start, play around with this by moving closer or further away from your light source until the light looks great. But don't forget tip number 2, pay attention to the light on your subject and in the background because they'll both change a lot depending on how close to your light source you are. An easy way to do this is to turn on your phone's selfie camera to check out the lighting. Reposition yourself until you see the lighting looks ideal. I typically turn on the selfie camera, hold it out so I'm there. So this is if I'm doing portraits, of course. And then I walk forward and backward a few times, or I can like spin around in a circle until I find where it looks good. So once you find the spot with great light, you can either snap your own photo or video or have someone else do it for you. So here's a few examples for you. In the first example, the light looks good on my face, but it appears dark in the background, even though the wall is white, actually, even though it looks gray in the picture, because I'm very close to the window. So that makes the contrast higher and the background darker. In the next example, I moved far away from the window in the same room. So even though the room is small, so even though I'm facing the window, the light isn't intense enough to look nice. So do note, though, that it is somewhat brighter on the background. You can kind of tell a little more that the wall is white. And then in the last photo, I found my lighting sweet spot for the look I was going for, where the lighting on my face and on the background looks ideal. So though depending on your style, you may prefer the first photo. A lot of people wonder how close they should stand to a window to get ideal lighting, but it totally depends on the weather and intensity of the sun on a given day. To give you an idea, in the example on the far right, I'm around 6 feet away from a large window in our house. In the first photo, I'm about 2 feet away, and in the middle photo, I'm around 10 feet away. Isn't it amazing how much lighting can change photos that are taken minutes apart? Tip number 4, stick with one color of light. You might think that the more light you have, the better your picture or video will look. But at times, this can actually ruin an otherwise good picture if the lighting is not all from the same color. The reason to use just one type of light is that each light source has a slightly different hue. For example, a lamp, window light, and fluorescent lights all have a different color of light. So lamps can typically be a little more orangey, window light is more like pure white, and fluorescent lights can be a little more on like the blue side. If you mix different colors of light in one photo, it'll turn out looking kind of funky, but not like in a good way, just kind of funky. If you do have multiple types of the same light, meaning they cast the same color tone of light, feel free to use them if you need to brighten up your photos. Just make sure you're not combining natural light and other light sources when possible. If you're using light from a window, turn off any lamps or overhead lighting. In the example on the left, I have a lamp on in the room that is also lit up by window light. And in the photo on the right, I turned off the lamp and it's window light only. You can see how the photo on the right looks cleaner, fresher, and more pro. It looks that way because it has one color of light lighting up the photo rather than the mixed colors of light, like in the left photo where the lamp casts the orangey glow, and then the orange makes the shadows look a little more blue. So when that's taken away, the phone can like assess the color tone a little better, and the white looks a little more pure white. And a note, if you do need supplemental light, add light of the same color tone unless you have an on-brand reason to do otherwise. Again, you can always go against the tips I'm sharing. It just depends what works for your business. I'm just sharing what are the best general rules of lighting. Tip number 5, try using natural light. Natural light is what professionals call photos and video that are lit up by the sun. Natural light is generally considered one of the most ideal lighting situations. So if it aligns with your brand's look, I suggest always taking photos lit up by the sun. This includes sunlight that comes in through your windows. Sunlight has the cleanest looking light, which means that it makes things that are white look pure white and shows colors at their truest hue. And it makes your skin look great. And best of all, it's free, so that's a bonus. You don't need to buy a bunch of lighting equipment if you let the sun light your photos and videos. In the past, I was a professional photographer for over 10 years, and I still, to this day, always prefer using the sun to light my photos and videos over artificial light when possible. So here are some examples of photos that were taken with natural light. You can see that it's possible to get photos that look a little more moody with natural light, but it's also possible to get photos that look very pure and bright white. It just depends how you use the natural light. And of course, editing. If these tips feel overwhelming, just remember once you find a few go-to on-brand locations with ideal lighting, you can go back to those locations again and again and again and again and use them and just take a lot of pictures from the same locations because you know the light is going to turn out just right. If you want to learn more about how to navigate specific lighting situations, remember to check out those lighting guides in the resources area. Thank you so much for watching. If you have a tip that you're really excited to implement, something that was like a light bulb moment for you, definitely leave it below in the comments area. I would love to hear from you. And if you want to know more about the program where I can help you create your DIY brand from scratch, and I'll actually give you personalized feedback on it, you can either email me or you can click on the link below to read more about it and sign up.